Some people might ask the question, how come you're in this drum business? You're not even a musician. I first fell in love with Latin music when I had a busboy job up in the Catskill Mountains in New York State. The top musicians of that time were Tito Puente, Machito, Eddie Palmieri. I had set out one day to buy a pair of Cuban bongos, and to my surprise, they didn't exist. And by the time I got through the third store, as I'm walking down the steps, I said, I'm gonna build my own pair of bongos. I had really virtually no money. So from scrap piles of metal came tools that were used to profile the bongos or to cut the tuning screws on a drill press.
Unlike many other companies or percussion companies, we always start out with a concept of a sound of a particular product, whether it be a new cowbell, a new block, or something which is totally unique to the industry. That's where it all starts from.
Early selling of my products was very challenging. They were sold initially to one store on 48th Street by the name of Al Wolf's Drummer Supplies, and it was sold on consignment. And it was with the understanding I would sell to none other. Then one day I got a call from Manny's, who was far bigger and much more aggressive. Asked me to come in on a Saturday, and I came in, went upstairs, and I walked downstairs with a big order. And I was saying to myself, how am I ever gonna tell Al Wolf the party's over? And that was the beginning of selling broadly to far more customers.
Depending on what the product is, will determine the type of materials that we use. We keep a stock of material here on the shelves of different types of wood, metal, sheet metal, tubing, chunks of plastic. So this way, when we're working on a project, we right away grab something off the shelf and we're ready to go. We try and keep a stock of everything we normally use here. We then go over to the machinery that we have here. We have a simple mill, we have an old lathe over here, and the machine that gets most of the work is our CNC machine. We're able to take what is drawn on the computers and send it over to the CNC machine without having to do a lot of programming, because in fact, if we had to do that, the products wouldn't happen because it takes so many line codes to do. And Andy or Rich will start making the first prototypes on the machinery. Once we get the first prototypes off, naturally, the first thing to do is, what does it sound like? If we're way off base of where we started or just a little bit, we'll then determine what we do next. The guys will go back to the drawings, we'll start tweaking the products, we'll start changing shapes, sizes, wall thickness. It's pretty much a trial and error process. So what we'll then do is go back and start making more prototypes again. And we'll just keep that process going back and forth, honing down the sound, and of course, with everything we do here being it's a percussion instrument, it is hit, it is struck, it is beat, we have to make sure the product is durable as well. We will then start showing it to various musicians. Luckily, we're very close to New York City over here, so we have a lot of musicians that live in the city and a lot of musicians that come through the area when they're on tour.
Growing a business at that time was strictly guerrilla. From having friends that would agree to allow me to take their photograph to people who would give me ideas as to what to produce. That was the essentials of building a company. The reason I did so well with artist relations is that these people were my friends. You know, for better or for worse, I'd hang out in like the worst of places just because I enjoyed hanging out with these rhythm monsters.
Martin Cohen, who was then the owner and founder of the company, started going to New York City, meeting with the top percussionists like Tito Puente and Jose Mangual Jr. and all the Latin players who used to play at the clubs in New York City. And he did a very grassroots approach to artist relations by meeting them and getting them to use the LP products. And from that, the artist program grew. And one thing we've always been very proud of has been the fact that our endorsers are a very integral part of our company, from testing new products or product prototypes, giving us their feedback so we can make the best products and make any changes to prototypes we have to.
And from that point, we will then go off to the factory, depending on what the product is, depends on where it's made.
My relationship with Angelo, who is now well into his 80s, began one day when I went to his shop and I said, "I want you to make this," and I had a bell in my hand.
This is the gentleman that really started the relationship with Martin Cohen. This is Angelo Marchione, my father-in-law, who had his first encounter with Martin back in '62. Martin came in with a cowbell and asked if my father-in-law could make a cowbell duplicate to what he had. And my father-in-law agreed, and on a handshake, we started doing what we are still doing 46 years later.
And I finally convinced him to make it, provided I pay him in 30 days. And like religion, I paid him in 30 days or less. And he's been a supplier ever since that day, which was probably 1963.